It's June 2017.
Bitcoin.
What is Bitcoin?
As an alternative to cash,
Bitcoin. It's called a digital gold. It's called the future of money, and it's a hedge against inflation.
I'm sitting in this bed, in the studio apartment, and I just became a millionaire.
The world is trying to make sense of Bitcoin. Most experts call it a bubble. Some dismiss it as internet play money. But in the background, something extraordinary is happening. A 12-year-old kid from Idaho is making a bet that even the most seasoned Wall Street traders wouldn't dare to take. His name? Eric Finman, a kid who's not only about to become one of the youngest traders, but also the world's youngest Bitcoin millionaire. Armed with nothing more than $1,000 and a vision, he dives headfirst into a market that no one takes seriously. And while bankers and economists laugh, he quietly accumulates what will become a fortune. This is the story of how Eric Finman, against all odds, turned a childhood gamble into millions.
Some kids had video games, some kids had sports, mine was Bitcoin.
Eric Finman was born on the 26th of October, 1998, in a small town called Post Falls in Idaho. And despite Post Falls being nothing spectacular, both of Eric's parents did actually achieve something significant in this little town. They had built successful lives for themselves in Idaho, with the couple both holding PhDs. And while his dad has a PhD in electrical engineering, his mother got hers in physics, naturally making the Finman family very unconventional. All of Eric's siblings were inquisitive and smart, often spending time around engineers instead of having recess, due to them being homeschooled. And Eric was keen to follow this path as well. His parents knew he was a bright child, with him having a fascination with technology from a young age. And he would even dress up as a mini Steve Jobs after his parents bought him an outfit for Christmas. But Finman's parents didn't homeschool him right away, which was starting to make his life difficult.
And the teachers there weren't supportive either, so these other students, they would criticize me, and then one teacher actually joined in and was kind of making me pretty sad in class, so it wasn't a great learning environment.
At the time, it was clear Eric didn't enjoy conventional schooling.
I didn't like school, was not a fan of it, did not fit in.
And his teachers weren't that enthusiastic about the young man's prospects either. According to Eric, one of his teachers had told him to drop out and work at McDonald's.
Even one teacher actually told me to drop out and work at McDonald's because I'll never amount to anything more in life.
And while Finman was keen to drop out of school, it wasn't McDonald's he had his eyes on. After years of switching schools and never finding a permanent place for his educational needs, Eric decided that the standard schooling route wasn't for him. And he created a plan that would convince his parents to let him drop out of school early and pursue his dreams. But what was this well-thought-out plan, you might ask? Well, Finman made a deal with his parents that would let him leave school if he made $1 million, all by himself.
By the time you're 18, then you have to go back to school, and that was the bet.
Almost as good of a deal as you hitting that subscribe button right now for more great content. Anyways, being a kid, Eric didn't have any money for an initial investment to make this deal happen, meaning he had to rely on a kind $1,000 donation from his grandmother, which she was originally saving for Eric's future scholarship fund.
Grandmother had given me $1,000 for my scholarship to go to school. I guess I stole it from that bank account and bought Bitcoin with it.
Now that Finman had a bit of money, he just needed to work out how to turn it into $1 million, with an unlikely source of information opening the door to his future wealth. After the financial crash in 2008, lots of Americans were upset with their current banking systems, which caused a large amount of unrest in many US states. This unrest would often lead to demonstrations or protests, which Eric Finman's older brother decided to attend, bringing Eric with him for the day out.
Bitcoin was just a few dollars. My older brother brought me to this protest, and it was very much like a footloose-like protest.
Despite all the chaos and noise of the protest, Finman claims he encountered a hippie who told him about Bitcoin and its potential to end Wall Street.
In the middle of running from the police, some guy, he had this orange shirt on with a bee on it that looked like a dollar sign. And I asked him, "What's that?" And I was just 12. And he said, "It's Bitcoin, man. It's gonna end Wall Street, bro." And he ran off.
Which, unsurprisingly, was an attractive statement at the time, given the financial crash. However, after doing some further research alongside his brother, Eric started to see the potential in Bitcoin. and took the leap of faith by purchasing $1,000 worth of the cryptocurrency while the coin was valued at around $10 to $12, meaning his modest investment gave him a lot of coins to work with. Little did he know, that single decision would set off a chain of events in ways no one could have imagined. The young trader spent his time away from school buying and selling the cryptocurrency while juggling his homework. Bitcoin became Eric's life, which was quickly becoming a very worthwhile use of his time. Eric bought into Bitcoin in mid-2011 for around $10, after which the coin dipped back down to around $5 or $6 after he purchased his coins. But Finman saw something in Bitcoin that seemingly no other trader on Wall Street was aware of, and he was keen to keep hold and trade more of his position. Finman was very quickly rewarded for his loyalty, with Bitcoin reaching over $15 per coin in January 2013. Of course, at this point, a novice trader like Eric could have easily sold all of his coins for a small profit, which would have still been impressive, given he was barely a teenager while trading the cryptocurrency. But small profits still weren't enough to draw Eric away from Bitcoin, and his decision to remain loyal was going to change his life forever. In 2013, it was clear that Eric's schoolwork was going to be a side quest in his journey, as trading Bitcoin was only getting more and more profitable for him. Although 2012 wasn't the most exciting year for Bitcoin investors, with the coin reaching heights of only around $12, 2013 was a much different story. As mentioned, Finman could have sold his coins for a small profit in January, but by the end of 2013, Bitcoin had reached a staggering $950 per coin, making Finman more profitable that year than most traders on Wall Street, with around an 8,000% return on his initial investment, which are numbers even the best traders can only dream about when investing in more conventional stocks and shares. But Eric now had a much harder decision to make, as this was no longer a small profit of a few dollars, and for such a junior trader, 2014 must have been an emotionally draining year. Despite hitting a valuation of over $900 in 2013, Bitcoin's valuation was dropping in 2014, ending the year at around $320 per coin, more than half of the valuation that Finman could have cashed out for in late 2013. Yet, even with the drop in price, his $1,000 investment in 2011 was still massively up in profit, and Eric was keen to upskill himself even further, wanting to follow in the footsteps of one of his biggest idols, Alexis Ohanian. By this time, Eric Finman's Bitcoin investments were going much better than expected, and he was keen to start his own business with some of the capital he had raised by trading cryptocurrency. Eric was a huge fan of Ohanian, with one of his brothers giving him a book written by the Reddit co-founder, which inspired his entrepreneurial efforts. Finman's initial Bitcoin investment of $1,000 was now a much larger number, with his trading profits greatly outperforming a more conventional trading strategy like indices trading. If Eric had put his $1,000 into something like the S&P 500 during 2011 to 2013, he would have made around a 40% profit. But instead of relying on the standard trading strategies, the young trader had now turned his $1,000 into over 100 times more thanks to trading Bitcoin. However, he was about to risk all the hard work he had done until this point. With Eric cashing out $100,000 from his investment profits to put into his business ventures. His first venture was a modest project, with the teenager hiring a developer to make him a Flappy Bird clone, which he managed to get onto the App Store. The app didn't have much success, but hiring a developer and launching the app gave Eric the confidence he needed to move into more advanced elements of running a company. His next business venture was very close to home for Eric, as he wanted to create a company that would aid students in rural areas in finding better teachers to educate them on a wide variety of topics.
I wanted to create a website where you could type in any subject you wanted to learn and find someone to teach you that over video chat.
But before he could even start such an ambitious business, he needed to tick off one of his bucket list goals. At 15 years old, Finman spent $8,500 of his $100,000 profits on buying a once-in-a-lifetime chance to spend the day with Ohanian, eating waffles, and attending a Brooklyn Nets game together. Eric's determination impressed the Reddit co-founder, with Alexis saying that he had to check himself the whole time to remind himself that he was talking to a teenager, which eventually resulted in the multimillionaire becoming a mentor for Finman throughout his career. After this meeting, the teenager made his education business dream a reality when he launched Botangle.
It's called Botangle, and its mission is to replace the public education system.
A company that focused on linking students with instructors around the world. Oh, and he also dropped out of high school, which was likely a much easier decision to make given his success in the cryptocurrency world. But for Botangle, the company gained mainstream attention after Eric created a Reddit post on a popular subreddit, bragging about his success running the company at just 15 years old, leading the young business owner to trend on Twitter and get people talking about his company. However, Eric wasn't going to stay in the business world forever, and he had hardly given up on the future of Bitcoin. In fact, he was ready to secure a legendary status within the crypto world. After attracting as much attention to himself and Botangle as possible, Eric Finman sold the company for a staggering 300 Bitcoin, which in today's Bitcoin price would value the business at $30 million, showing that he was wise to withdraw $100,000 worth of his precious Bitcoin to start the company. Not only was this yet another incredible achievement from Finman, but with Bitcoin hitting $2,700 per coin in June 2017, he also became the youngest Bitcoin millionaire in the world, which is insane, given he started with only $1,000 from his grandma. What makes this moment even more special was the promise he made to his parents when he was just 12 years old, as he could now leave the education system forever after earning at least $1 million at the age of 18, which just goes to show how powerful a bit of self-belief can be. However, getting all this money at such a young age must have been incredibly overwhelming, as Finman's followers were noticing some changes in the young and humble crypto trader, and they weren't positive changes. Now that Eric Finman's Bitcoin stash had reached a valuation of over $6 million, he started living the rich kid lifestyle, flaunting his wealth to his followers and making somewhat out-of-touch comments about how to get rich. One of his first purchases after making it big was an Audi R8, which he would often show off in various posts on Instagram, alongside laying on a bed covered in money, and his latest purchases from shopping sprees in some of the most expensive stores in America. He also used some of his money to create a real-life Dr. Octopus suit, but this was a more noble cause, as you could also use the suit for prosthetic prototyping. However, it was clear that Finman had now suddenly transformed from wanting to change the world to suddenly flexing his wealth, and he was even looking to get involved in the hypebeast markets, which was more of an addiction than an investment. During this time, Eric described an average day in his life as, I wake up, and I'm just in my blanket made of $100 bills, and I get up and they fall off my face, and I jump into my Yeezys as soon as I get off the bed, and brush my teeth with a Supreme toothbrush. It's just a day in the life, so if it so happens to be flexing in that day in the life, then what a coincidence. And as you may have gathered from that statement, Finman was starting to invest in many of the most popular brands in the hypebeast space, purchasing large quantities of Yeezy, Adidas, Supreme, and other designer brands. These items, of course, hold some sort of value and can be traded in a similar way to cryptocurrency, with the simple buy low, sell high mindset. But these investments were quickly becoming an expensive addiction for Bitcoin's youngest millionaire. In an interview with GQ, he stated that he was spending tens of thousands of dollars on these brands, going on to say that buying them felt like an addiction, and as a result, flexing wealth was slowly taking over his life. Eric later explained that many of his social media antics were just an act, and that he didn't really have this rich kid persona that he sold to all his followers. But if he claimed that this was already an act, then what else would he lie about? Well, when you dig a little deeper into the backstory surrounding his rise to wealth, there are some inconsistencies that are hard to ignore. One of the first differences in Eric Finman's story is the incredible deal he made with his parents. Depending on which source you go to, you'll likely hear a slightly different version of the story, with Investopedia stating that he made a deal with his parents when he was 12 years old, that if he became a millionaire by the age of 18, he could leave school. However, according to the well-respected New York magazine, it wasn't until after he founded Botangle that he made $1 million deal with his dad to stay out of college, making him around 15 at the time. Even Business Insider has a different variation of this story, with them stating that at 18 years old, Eric upped the ante of an existing deal, allowing him to stay out of college if he made $1 million. Another interesting inconsistency is the story of how Eric discovered Bitcoin in the first place. with the original narrative being that he met a hippie during a 2008 financial crash protest he attended with his brother, who told him that Bitcoin was the future and that it could take down Wall Street. But when New York Magazine wrote their profile on Finman, they made no mention of a protest. And in fact, they stated that he found out about Bitcoin in 2013 thanks to his older brother, who had already purchased the coin before him. This is a big problem within itself, because if Eric had only found out about Bitcoin in 2013, there's no way he could have bought any at 12 years old, given he would have been around 15 when his brother first introduced him to the cryptocurrency. Of course, this doesn't mean that Eric Finman made all of this up. It could simply be a couple of journalistic errors when reporting about his backstory. But nevertheless, it's still very surprising that such a unique and attention-grabbing story would have so many important inconsistencies in what should be an easy backstory to tell. And funnily enough, if we fast forward to the present day, Finman isn't a fan of his rise to fortune either. By 2021, Eric had amassed a staggering 341 Bitcoin, which has a valuation of at least $34 million, because of the current price of Bitcoin being over $100,000 per coin. Considering that he started with just $1,000, this amazing return makes him one of the most successful crypto traders in the world. But with the rise of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in the modern world, Eric is starting to regret the way he made his money. In 2024, Finman stated that he was sick of being the Bitcoin person and that he was desperate to get out of crypto, with the trader instead focusing on the aircraft market. In recent interviews, the young millionaire seems to be happy, but whether he stepped away from Bitcoin or not is hard to tell, as Eric isn't in the public eye as much as he used to be. However, the crypto world will never forget his extraordinary journey to becoming the youngest Bitcoin millionaire as a kid, with many articles praising him across the internet. And whether you believe it or not, it truly is one of the craziest stories in trading history. But did you know that there was also a trader who faked his way into becoming one of the most powerful men on Wall Street? To find out more about that, click the video on the screen right now.